Sarah Chen couldn't sleep. Again. Mars moons cast their pale light through her bedroom window as she adjusted her grandfather's antique telescope, a relic from Earth that had survived the 3-month journey to the colony. The 13-year-old preferred the old manual scope to the colony's digital arrays. There was something magical about seeing the stars directly, without computer enhancement. Through the eyepiece, she tracked a strange distortion moving across Phobos. At first, she thought it was a smudge on the lens, but it moved with purpose, growing larger. Sarah had memorized every satellite and supply ship schedule. This wasn't supposed to be there. Her hands trembled as she reached for her tablet, bringing up the colony's astronomical database. The distortion disappeared. Then the lights went out. Sarah's heart pounded as she heard the first screams from the neighboring HAB unit. The emergency lights didn't activate. They always activated during drills. Through her window, she watched impossible shadows move across the dome's surface, massive shapes that shouldn't exist in the thin Martian atmosphere. The colony's warning sirens remained silent. Her door hissed open. Instead of her parents, a towering figure filled the frame. Its armor absorbed the moonlight, creating a void in the shape of a warrior. Multiple eyes glowed with an artificial purple light, scanning her room with mechanical precision. Sarah dove for her desk drawer where she kept her emergency beacon, a 13th birthday gift from her ever-practical parents. The figure moved with shocking speed. A 3-fingered hand caught her arm, surprisingly gentle but impossibly strong. Efficient, it said in a voice like grinding gears. "No resistance will make this easier, young one." Sarah's fingers closed around the beacon. As the creature lifted her, she pressed the activation switch and let the device fall back into the drawer. The small red light began to pulse, hidden among her collection of Earth seashells. Through the colony's corridors, Sarah saw other children being gathered, her classmates, her neighbors, all moving in shocked silence. The creatures herded them toward a massive ship that now dominated the colony's central plaza, its hull rippling with the same distortion effect she'd spotted earlier. Inside the vessel, the being finally released her arm. "Your designation?" it asked. Sarah lifted her chin, remembering her mother's words about facing fear. Sarah Chen, Martian Colony Archive Number NC-2047G. The creature's purple eyes flickered. "Unnecessary data. You are now Asset 24. It gestured to a cell-like chamber. "Enter. Compliance will be rewarded." As the energy field sealed her inside, Sarah watched more children being processed and assigned numbers. She counted them silently, keeping her face carefully blank. 30 in total. All between 8 and 14 years old. Old enough to follow instructions, young enough to be malleable. She'd read enough history to understand the strategy. From a higher deck, she heard a different alien voice, this one almost musical. "Commander, I must protest. The historical data regarding human young is irrelevant," the commander interrupted. 30 children from a minor colony. Standard procedure, proven effective on 12 species. The adults will submit rather than risk harm to their offspring. Your concern is noted, Diplomat Sextol, but unnecessary. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had missed 3 critical facts: her activated beacon, her perfect memory of the ship's layout from their walk, and most importantly, they hadn't checked her pockets. Her hands closed around her tablet's data chip, and she began to plan. These aliens, whoever they were, had just made their first mistake. They assumed human children were helpless. The first song started 3 hours into their captivity. A wavering voice singing "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," echoed through the detention block. Sarah recognized Tommy Zhang's voice, the 8-year-old who never stopped humming during math class. Other voices joined in, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. On the command deck, Diplomat Zextal's facial ridges twitched with concern as they watched the security feeds. Commander Vaxter, this behavior requires immediate attention. The Vraxley commander's exoskeleton clicked as they turned. They make noise. All young do this before accepting their situation. No. Zextal pulled up their research files. Human children don't sing from fear. This is different. In Earth's history, their young have used songs too. Colony status report. A guard interrupted, entering the bridge. The adults have discovered the missing juveniles. They're doing something unusual. The main screen activated, showing the colony's central plaza. Hundreds of parents had gathered, each holding a light. And they were singing the same song as their children. Fascinating, Zextal whispered. They're establishing connection, maintaining group cohesion. Commander, I've studied 12 species' responses to young capture protocol. None have exhibited this behavior. In her cell, Sarah heard the song change. Now it was row, row, row your boat, but with a difference. The timing was off. She smiled, recognizing Lily Martinez's voice leading the round. Lily, whose mother taught music theory and binary code at the colony school. Life is but a dream, sang one group. Row, row, row your boat, began another, 3 beats later. Gently down the stream, a third group joined. Sarah counted the beats between each entrance. 3, 7, 3, 7. Binary code hidden in a children's song. She began to sing along, adding her own timing to the mix. Through the energy field of her cell, she could see the guards mounting confusion as the singing grew more complex. Turn off their audio transmitters, Commander Vaxter ordered. Inadvisable, Zextal countered. Isolation often triggers stress responses in human young. Their biology is volatile when distressed. Besides, this is clearly a coping mechanism. Let them exhaust themselves. The commander's purple eyes narrowed. You show unusual concern for these assets, Diplomat. I show concern for our mission's success. My research indicates human adults become extremely dangerous when their offspring exhibit signs of distress. The singing appears to be keeping them calm. Would you prefer screaming? In the detention block, the singing continued. Sarah had decoded enough to understand. 3737 was safe in the colony's emergency binary code. The varying rhythms that followed told her how many children were in each section, rough layouts of the cell blocks, guard rotation patterns. A new song started. The ants go marching. Sarah almost laughed. Hidden in its steady beat was the ship's standard duty shift length, 12 Martian hours. Knowledge was power, and with every nursery rhyme and folk song, the children were building their arsenal. An interesting cultural observation, Zextal noted in their personal log. Human children, when faced with darkness, create light. When faced with silence, create sound. When faced with isolation, create community. Most concerning of all, they do it instinctively, as if their entire species evolved to overcome captivity. The commander dismissed these concerns with a wave. They are merely chasing away fear with noise. Let them sing. Soon they will learn their new place in the Empire. But in the cells below, 30 young voices joined in perfect harmony, weaving messages of hope and defiance into the very songs their captors allowed them to sing. Simon says, "Tap your right foot 3 times," Sarah called out, her voice carrying through the detention block. A chorus of taps followed, but she noticed some cells remained silent. Good. They remembered the rules from schoolyard games. Only follow if Simon says. The Vraxthi guards watched with professional detachment as their prisoners engaged in what their cultural database identified as a primitive educational exercise. None noticed how the tapping patterns matched their own patrol intervals. Simon says draw a circle on the wall. Sarah continued. She used her breakfast porridge to sketch what looked like a wobbly sun. Inside it, she carefully traced the ship's ventilation pattern she'd glimpsed during their daily exercise period. Juvenile behavior exhibits deteriorating mental state, a guard logged. Subject 24 appears to be regressing to primitive marking behaviors. In her cell, Lily Martinez drew what seemed to be a family of stick figures. The guards didn't recognize the simplified circuit diagram hidden in the arrangement of limbs. Tommy Zhang created what looked like a spaceship, but the apparently random arrangement of windows matched the guard station layout perfectly. Simon says clap once if you're scared, Sarah called out. A few scattered claps, their code for guard positions. Simon says clap twice if you miss home. More claps, marking emergency exit locations. The children had turned their fear into a map, their loneliness into reconnaissance. Zextel observed the activities with growing unease. Commander, I've been analysing their game patterns. There's a regularity that suggests. Your obsession with these juveniles borders on concerning, Diplomat, Commander Vaxter interrupted. Perhaps you should focus on preparing the ransom demands for the Earth authorities. A new guard arrived for duty, his armour gleaming. Sir, the prisoners have requested access to their educational tablets. Protocol suggests maintaining normal routines reduces stress responses. The commander waved dismissively. Grant them stripped-down devices. Games only. No communication capabilities. Sarah suppressed a smile when her tablet arrived. The Vraxthi had removed all communication and programming functions, leaving only simple puzzle games. But they hadn't understood that Earth children's games had evolved alongside technology. Every child in the colony grew up playing strategy simulations. Simon says let's play Starship Captain, Sarah announced. The other children quickly loaded the game. A simple simulator where players designed spacecraft systems. As they played, their designs grew increasingly complex, each game scenario testing a different ship system configuration. Look at my high score, Tommy called out, his screen displaying a seemingly random arrangement of cargo pods. Sarah decoded it instantly, a perfect map of the detention block's power conduits. In the command center, Zextal made one final attempt. Commander, human educational methods often incorporate. Enough, Vaxter snapped. They play games. They draw pictures. They behave exactly as expected of immature specimens. Your paranoia does not serve the Empire. The commander turned away, missing Zextal's look of resignation. Below, 30 children continued their games, each seemingly innocent action adding to their growing understanding of their prison. Simon says prepare for bed, Sarah called out as the ship's night cycle began. The guards noted with approval how quickly the children obeyed, not understanding that prepare for bed had been the colony's code for be ready. In the darkness of her cell, Sarah reviewed everything they'd learned. Tomorrow they begin the next phase. After all, as her mother always said, the best time to act was when everyone else thought you were just playing games. The United Earth Defense Council chamber had never seen such a gathering. Military leaders sat beside kindergarten teachers. Corporate CEOs shared benches with playground designers. On the massive screen, Mars Colony's emergency beacon still pulsed, each beat a reminder of 30 missing children. The Vraks they demand is simple, Admiral Chen said, his daughter's school photo displayed behind him. Earth's unconditional surrender in exchange for the children's return. They've given us 48 hours to comply. A hand rose from the civilian section. Dr. Emily Martinez, child psychologist and mother to Lily, stood. They've made a critical error in their strategy. They assume that having our children makes us weak. She paused, her voice steady despite her tears. They don't understand that it makes us dangerous. Across Earth, something unprecedented was happening. SpaceX's Elon Musk Jr. converted his Mars tourism fleet into battle cruisers. In Japan, Honda's Mech Suit division, designed for construction, began installing weapon systems. Every Arab with a pilot's license volunteered for the rescue fleet. The Vraks they expect us to fragment under pressure, General Santos explained, highlighting the alien fleet positions. Their psychological warfare relies on exploiting family bonds as weakness. In India, a group of parents who coded educational games repurposed their skills to crack alien encryption. Brazilian daycare workers, experts at tracking multiple small targets, developed new radar systems for detecting individual life signs aboard massive ships. We've received transmissions from 17 other species, Admiral Chen continued, all advising immediate surrender, all citing the Vraks' undefeated record in young capture scenarios. He allowed himself a grim smile. None of those species were human. In orbit, the International Space Station transformed. Every module designed for scientific research now housed weapons systems. Elementary school teachers worked alongside military strategists, their understanding of child psychology proving invaluable in predicting possible scenarios. They're keeping our children in standard detention cells, Dr. Martinez explained to the tactical team. But our children play hide and seek in ventilation ducts. They climb jungle gyms more complex than alien ship layouts. They solve puzzles for fun. Her hands traced potential escape routes. The Vraks they have built the universe's most elaborate playground. The response came from everywhere. A grandmother in Kenya offered her lifetime's research on child-safe explosives. A Danish kindergarten designed zero-gravity rescue protocols. Parents worldwide donated their life savings to fund the fleet. In his private chamber, Admiral Chen received a coded transmission. The message contained just 2 words in his daughter's handwriting. "We're ready." The Vraks they expect parents paralyzed by fear, he announced to the council. Instead, they've mobilized every adult who has ever loved a child. They think they're holding hostages. He loaded the tactical display. They're actually surrounded by a species that designed its entire civilization around protecting its young. The fleet assembled in Earth's orbit. Each ship named after a school or playground. The Crayon Warrior, the Hopscotch Vengeance, the Recess Queen. Names that would have seemed comical weeks ago now struck fear into alien hearts. "We have 24 hours until their deadline," General Santos stated. "Our children have done their part, maintaining the illusion of helplessness while gathering intelligence. Now it's our turn." Dr. Martinez studied the tactical display, her psychologist's mind seeing patterns others missed. The Vraks they built their empire on the assumption that young means weak. That parents will surrender rather than risk their children. She smiled, and there was nothing gentle in it. Let's show them why Earth's species survived by protecting our young instead of exploiting them. The rescue fleet began its burn toward Mars, carrying with it humanity's message. Threatening our children doesn't make us submit. It makes us evolve. The human juveniles require sustenance again, the guard reported, his exoskeleton clicking with irritation. They claim our nutrition paste is causing illness. Saga watched the exchange through her cell's energy field, fighting to keep her expression properly miserable. Phase 1 had worked perfectly. 3 days of children complaining of stomach aches, each symptom carefully coordinated to match Earth medical databases. Commander Vaxter's purple eyes flared with annoyance. "Diplomat, your assessment." Zextal consulted their files. Human young require specific nutritional compositions. Their development is particular. The risk of actual biological distress is significant. Fine. The commander activated the ship's fabricator controls. Grant them access to their food synthesis protocols, under supervision. Tommy was selected to go first, his small frame trembling convincingly as he approached the food synthesizer. "See, can I make cookies?" "My mom always makes them when I'm sick." The guards watched him input the recipe with clumsy fingers, making several errors that required him to restart. None of them noticed how each mistake revealed another layer of the machine's programming structure. "The chocolate chips have to be exactly right," Sarah called from her cell. "Remember, Tommy, like in coding class, precision matters." The guards exchanged confused looks as children began shouting specific cookie requirements. In reality, each demanded variable taught them more about the synthesizer's base code. More butter. No less sugar. The temperature has to be exact. Each modification revealed new system prompts. Each error message exposed another layer of security protocols. The children had turned recipe debugging into system hacking. Their preoccupation with exact food parameters seems excessive, a guard noted. Zextal's facial ridges twitched. "Commander, this level of detail in their requests shows their species' bizarre fixation on feeding rituals," Vaxter interrupted. "Let them waste time perfecting their treats. It keeps them occupied." By the third day of cookie experimentation, Sarah had mapped the synthesizer's entire command structure. The device shared base programming with every system on the ship, a fact the Vraxthi considered irrelevant when dealing with children. "Simon says it's cookie time," Sarah called out, using their established game structure. The responding chorus of specific recipe modifications carried coded instructions through the detention block. In her cell, Lily methodically tested temperature variations that probed network firewalls. Tommy's increasingly complex chocolate chip patterns mapped data packet structures. Each failed batch of cookies revealed more about the ship's systems. "Their persistence is remarkable," Zextal noted, watching Tommy start his 15th attempt. "Most species would have accepted the nutrition paste by now." "They are young," the commander dismissed. "Young ones often fixate on comfort foods." Sarah suppressed a smile as the next batch emerged perfectly golden brown. The guards didn't realize that hidden in its chocolate chip pattern was the final piece of the ship's command code. Accessed through a simple food synthesizer they'd assumed children couldn't possibly understand. "Simon says share the cookies," she called out. As treats were distributed through the cells, so was the knowledge that they now had backdoor access to every system on the ship. The Vraxthi had made another critical mistake. They forgot that Earth children grew up alongside technology. That coding was taught alongside cooking. That every game, every toy, every activity was preparation for understanding complex systems. In the darkness of her cell, Sarah held up a cookie and smiled. Tomorrow, they'd show their captors why you should never give human children access to a computer, even one disguised as a food synthesizer. "Proximity alert," the Vraxthi sensor officer reported. "Human vessels approaching. Designation." He paused, puzzled. "Playground warrior. Hopscotch Avenger, Kindergarten's Wrath. Commander Vaxter's exoskeleton rattled with laughter. They named their warships after juvenile recreation areas. Display tactical analysis. The fleet appeared on the main screen. Ships of various sizes, many clearly converted civilian vessels. Their formation seemed chaotic, almost playful. Several appeared to be executing what the database identified as playground games in their approach vectors. "Sir," the weapons officer called out, "their maneuvers make no tactical sense. They're skipping trajectories, playing leapfrog with the asteroid belt." In her cell, Sarah heard the ship's alert status change. Time for the next phase. "Simon says nap time," she called out. Across the detention block, children began their practiced routine of apparent surrender to sleep. The guards relaxed slightly. The common rest period meant fewer juveniles to monitor. None noticed Tommy slip into the maintenance duct during their shift change, his small frame perfect for navigating spaces designed for repair drones. Their attacks are unconventional. Zextal observed as another human ship executed a maneuver that seemed to mimic hopscotch through the Vraxthi defense grid. They're using patterns we haven't encountered before. Because they're tactically absurd, Vaxter snapped. No serious military force wooled. The ship shuddered. Somewhere in the lower decks, a series of systems began failing in sequence. Like a row of dominoes falling, another Earth children's game the Vraxthi had dismissed as meaningless. Multiple system failures, the engineering officer reported. The pattern matches, playground equipment layouts. In the ventilation system, Tommy reached his target junction. The maintenance panel's security was designed to stop infiltrators. It wasn't designed to stop an 8-year-old who'd spent his life climbing through colony dome support structures. "Sir, shield generators are responding oddly," the defense officer reported. "They're cycling in some kind of pattern, like they're playing jump rope." Sarah began to sing, her voice carrying through the detention block. "Ring around the rosy." Other children joined in, their synchronized voices masking the sound of Tommy's work in the ducts. The ship rocked again. On the bridge, chaos erupted as systems began behaving erratically. Life support cycled in rhythm with the children's song. Gravity shifted like a seesaw. "How are they doing this?" Vaxtar demanded. "These attacks shouldn't be effective." "Assessment," Zextal said quietly. "They're not attacking like adults. They're attacking like children, and we designed nothing to defend against that." Through the cell block, Sarah's voice led another chorus. "London Bridge is falling down." As if in response, structural integrity warnings blared across multiple decks. The human fleet continued its bizarre dance, each ship moving in patterns that defied military logic, but perfectly matched the games their names suggested. They weren't fighting like soldiers. They were playing, and they were winning. "Security breach," a guard shouted. "The prisoners are all in their cells," Sarah answered sweetly, watching through the energy field as systems crashed around them. "We're just playing games, like children do." On the bridge, Zextal turned to the commander. "They've been playing games the entire time. We just didn't understand the rules." As alarms blared and systems failed, Sarah smiled. The Vraxthi had built their empire on the assumption that children's games were meaningless. They were about to learn why humans taught their young to play, because play was how they learned to win. All systems compromised. The Vraxthi engineer reported, his voice trembling. "We're detecting access patterns originating from the detention block food synthesizer." Commander Vaxter stormed into the prisoner section, purple eyes blazing with fury. The scene that greeted him defied comprehension. The cell energy fields flickered in perfect synchronization with a clapping game the children were playing. Essential ship systems pulsed to the rhythm of their songs. Sarah Chen stood at the guard's control panel, her small fingers dancing across the interface. Around her, other children were systematically removing panels, rewiring systems, and coordinating with a precision that no prisoner, let alone a child, should possess. "Stop this immediately," Vaxter commanded. Sarah turned, her young face serene. "Why? We're just playing. Like you wanted us to." Her smile carried echoes of her father's tactical genius. "By the way, I transmitted your weapons specifications to the fleet an hour ago. Did you know your encryption used the same base code as the cookie recipe database?" "Impossible," the commander sputtered. "Your children?" "Yes," Sarah agreed, her voice carrying the weight of every lesson her colony had taught her. "We're children who build sandcastles in Mars gravity, who play hide and seek in pressurized tunnels, who learn orbital mechanics before we learn to write. Being young doesn't make us helpless, it makes us adaptable." The ship shuddered as another system fell to the children's coordinated assault. Through the viewport, the human fleet continued its bizarre dance, each movement now precisely calculated to exploit the weaknesses Sarah's team had exposed. "You should have scanned us for knowledge instead of weapons," Tommy called from inside a maintenance duct. "My mom's a systems engineer. She says the best way to learn is through play." Zextal arrived, their facial ridges contorted in what might have been admiration. "Fascinating. You used our assumptions about your capabilities against us. We thought you were playing games." "We were." Lily interrupted, her hands deep in a circuitry panel. "That's how humans learn. That's how we survive. That's how we win." Warning klaxons blared as the detention box emergency protocols activated. Protocols now under the children's control. Sarah watched the commander's exoskeleton pale as he realized the full extent of their manipulation. "Your empire takes children to control their parents," Sarah said, her voice carrying the strength of Earth's entire history. "But you never asked why humans spend so much time and energy raising their young. Why we play, why we learn, why we explore." The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. Through the corridors, the sound of 30 children's voices raised in victory echoed like thunder. Each system they'd compromised, each weakness they'd exposed, had been accomplished through games their captors had allowed them to play. "Your species," Vaxter struggled to understand. "Your children are weapons." "No," Sarah corrected, as the first rescue teams breached the hull. "We're not weapons. We're explorers, inventors, dreamers. You just taught us that sometimes those are the most powerful weapons of all." The detention block doors opened, revealing Earth's rescue teams, led by parents who had transformed their love into unstoppable force. Sarah's final command sequence activated, transmitting everything they'd learned about Vraxi systems to the fleet. "Next time," she said, watching the commander's worldview shatter, "remember that humans don't just protect their children. They teach them. And we learn fastest when we're playing games." The rescue teams moved in, and the Vrax they learned their final lesson: never mistake a human child's play for weakness. Sometimes, the most dangerous opponent is the one who approaches war as a game, because they've spent their whole life learning how to win. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Dextal approached the podium. Above them, holographic displays showed the aftermath of what historians now called the Children's Gambit. The Vraxley Empire, undefeated for centuries, had been transformed by 30 human children playing games. "My findings are conclusive," Zextal began. We fundamentally misunderstood human childhood. We saw their extended development period as weakness, their play as frivolity, their games as meaningless. We were wrong. Images flickered above. Sarah Chen teaching other species children how to turn cookie recipes into coding lessons. Tommy Zhang demonstrating how maintenance ducts could become adventure courses. Lily Martinez showing alien diplomats how music could carry complex information. Humanity doesn't protect their children because they're weak, Sextol continued. They protect them because childhood is when humans are most dangerous, when their capacity to learn, adapt, and overcome is at its peak. What we saw as vulnerability was actually dedicated training time. In the Mars Colony School, now rebuilt and expanded, Sarah sat in the audience watching the new semester's musical production, The Cookie Gambit. On stage, children reenacted their victory through song and dance, each performance simultaneously entertaining and instructing the next generation. The Vraxthi Empire's failure wasn't in our military strategy, Zextal explained, their ridges rippling with emotion. It was in our assumption that any species would evolve to have truly helpless young. We failed to ask the critical question. Why would humans invest so much in children if childhood didn't serve a vital purpose? The Council watched footage of human playground equipment, structures that taught physics, teamwork, risk assessment, and spatial reasoning. Games that developed pattern recognition, strategic thinking, and adaptive problem-solving. Songs that preserved knowledge and coordinated group actions. Their children defeated us using the very tools we allowed them to keep, Sextol said. Because we couldn't imagine that playground games were combat training. That nursery rhymes could be military codes. That toy-making could teach engineering. In the audience, former Commander Vaxter, now a leading advocate for interspecies education reform, nodded slowly. His own young had recently enrolled in human-designed learning programs, where play and discovery replaced rigid instruction. The human concept of play isn't mere recreation, Sextol concluded. It's how they teach their young to reshape reality itself. Every game is a simulation. Every toy is a training tool. Every song is a lesson in disguise. Sarah smiled as the stage production reached its final. A complex musical number that actually contained the complete schematics for defeating Vraxthi security systems. The audience applauded, not realizing they were watching the next generation learn victory through violin strings and dance steps. My final recommendation to the Council is this, Zextal said. Mark Earth and all its colonies as Category 0 military targets. Not because their adults are fierce, though they are. Not because their weapons are advanced, though they can be. But because every human child is born with the potential to reshape the universe through play, and their entire civilization is designed to nurture that potential. As the Council session ended, Sarah led her class of mixed-species students, including young Vraxthi, in a new game she'd designed. On the surface, it looked like simple tag. In reality, it taught advanced orbital mechanics. Remember, she told her students, her smile carrying the wisdom of that long-ago victory, the most important thing isn't whether you win or lose. It's how many different ways you learn to play the game. Above them, Mars moons traced their eternal dance across the sky, watching as children from across the galaxy learned humanity's most powerful lesson. Sometimes the best way to prepare for an uncertain future is to play like your universe depends on it. Because sometimes it does.